to Hallow Turf.
Football has always been more than just a game. At the FIFA World Cup, nations unite behind their teams, and across Africa, supporters traditionally rally behind any African country competing on football's biggest stage. But this time, something unusual happened when South Africa stepped onto the field against Mexico in their opening World Cup match. Many African fans were not cheering for Bafana Bafana. Instead, they were cheering for Mexico. Social media exploded with Mexican flags, sombrero memes, mariachi jokes, and playful celebrations. At first glance, it seemed like harmless football, banter, but beneath the jokes lay a much deeper and more troubling story. Story about migration, a story about xenophobia, and a story about how tensions within Africa spilled onto the world's biggest football stage. So why did thousands of African fans celebrate South Africa's defeat? And what does it reveal about the growing divisions across the continent? Let's find out. The match that started the conversation, South Africa, entered the tournament as one of 10 African teams competing in the expanded FIFA World Cup, co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. For many supporters, the opening match against Mexico was expected to be another moment of African solidarity. Instead, it became a symbol of growing frustration. On the field, South Africa struggled. Mexico controlled much of the match and eventually secured a convincing 2-0 victory. But as the final whistle blew, the real drama began online. Social media platforms were flooded with posts from African users celebrating Mexico's wins, changed their profile pictures to Mexican flags. Others jokingly adopted Spanish-sounding names. Many used the phrase, "The message was clear." Many African fans, this was no longer just about football. Why were some Africans supporting Mexico? The answer lies in South Africa's ongoing tensions surrounding migration. For years, migrants from countries such as Zimbabwe, Malawi, Nigeria, Ghana, and the Democratic Republic of Congo have moved to South Africa seeking economic opportunities. Many arrived after the end of apartheid in 1994, believing South Africa offered a brighter future. However, as unemployment climbed to more than 30%, anti-immigrant sentiment grew stronger. Some South Africans began blaming foreign nationals for unemployment, crime, and pressure on public services. These accusations have often been challenged by researchers and economists, but the perception remains widespread among parts of the population. In recent weeks, reports of intimidation and threats against migrants have drawn international attention. Anti-migrant groups demanded that undocumented foreigners leave the country by June, reported in several areas. As a result, resentment began spreading beyond South Africa's borders. When the World Cup arrived, some African fans saw the tournament as an opportunity to express their frustration. One social media user asked, "Why should Africans support South Africa simply because it is an African country?" Another wrote that they were supporting Mexico so South Africa could go home early. These comments reflected anger over what many viewed as the mistreatment of fellow Africans. Everyone agreed with the anti-South Africa sentiment. The World Cup quickly exposed a deep divide among African football supporters. In Atlanta, Congolese football fan Daniel Kaniki explained why he supported Mexico. He argued that Africa should act like one family and that countries targeting fellow Africans weaken continental unity. To him, supporting Mexico was a symbolic protest, but nearby, Ghanaian supporter Vanlare Quis took the opposite position. He remained firmly behind South Africa. As a proud African, he believed one country's actions should not define an entire nation. He argued that anti-immigrant attitudes, division was also visible elsewhere on the continent. In South Sudan, Many supporters stood strongly behind Bafana Bafana. For South Sudanese citizens, South Africa holds a special place in history. Many associate South Africa's struggle against apartheid with their own journey toward independence. 23-year-old student George Kenyi Charles Rahan expressed disappointment at seeing fellow Africans celebrate Mexico's victory. For him, South Africa was representing Africa on the global stage and deserved continental support regardless of political disagreements. South Africa responds back in South Africa. The reaction was equally intense. The government praised the national team's effort despite the defeat. Officials commended the players for showing determination, unity, and pride while representing the country on the world's biggest sporting stage. Meanwhile, some argued that South Africa qualified for the World Cup on its own merits and did not need outside approval. Others defended stricter immigration policies and insisted that foreign nationals should enter the country legally. The exchanges quickly became heated. What began as football banter increasingly reflected real-world tensions surrounding migration, national identity, and economic hardship. Growing regional crisis, the controversy surrounding the World Cup match came at a time of escalating concern. Several African governments had already begun taking action. Nigeria became the latest country to repatriate some of its citizens from South Africa, Ghana. Zimbabwe and Malawi had previously organized evacuations or assisted citizens who felt threatened. These developments highlighted the seriousness of the situation. This issue had moved far beyond social media arguments, was now affecting diplomatic relations and the lives of ordinary people. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa attempted to strike a careful balance. He warned citizens not to take law into their own hands and emphasized that only authorized government officials could enforce immigration laws. At the same time, he acknowledged that many South Africans had concerns that deserved attention. His comments reflected the challenge facing South Africa today. How can the country address economic frustrations without allowing migrants to become scapegoats? And how can it preserve its reputation as a leader on the African continent while facing growing accusations of xenophobia? South Africa's 2-0 defeat to Mexico may ultimately be remembered for much more than football. The match revealed a painful reality. The spirit of African unity, often celebrated during international tournaments, is being tested by real-world political, economic, and social tensions. Memes were funny, the jokes were creative, but beneath the laughter was a serious message. Many Africans are questioning what continental solidarity truly means when fellow Africans feel unwelcome. In one of the continent's most influential nations, football often reflects society, and in this case, a single World Cup match became a mirror showing deeper divisions that cannot be solved on the pitch. As the tournament continues, one question remains: can Africa rediscover the unity that once defined its support for one another? Or will the divisions exposed by this World Cup continue to grow long after the final whistle has blown?